platforms now. Okay, people are
Welcome,
filling in.
everybody. Welcome to EWC webinar. Yay! Carlos, can you pull up the global pool and talk to that for a minute? Let me just make sure everybody on Slack knows we are live.
Great. Okay, I'm getting this up now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Happy Tuesday. Let's take a look. Okay, I'm going to maximize my screen here. So as we're starting to close up the round, at least for global pool, the countries that are to the left side of the panel, so everybody from Afghanistan down to Rwanda in that global pool, you have a series of deliverables that have been assigned to you. Well, they have been assigned already. That will be a part of what we will be reviewing, along with the submitted application to Entrepreneurship World Cup as the evaluation for this global pool part of the EWC competition. If you are tuning in from countries that are not in global pool, and that would include countries like India, South Africa, Nigeria, Pakistan, etc., you would fit into the country competition area. So everything that I'm saying regarding the evaluation of deliverables and in combination with this EWC application, you can disregard. Just focus on getting in your applications for Entrepreneurship World Cup and await for notifications on what your country organizers will be promoting and also organizing for whatever type of country competition that you'll be having. So it's a pretty clear distinction between both groups. But if you are in any of the countries to the left, one last time, please take a look at these deliverables that you can see here, whether you're in idea stage, early stage, or growth stage. It lists them out, and they are available on the EWC Accelerate platform. And also make sure that application is complete. If one of these are not submitted and you're in global pool, we can't evaluate you. So we're definitely looking forward to receiving all of those in the upcoming days and weeks. And good luck, everybody.
Well, guys, this is a really wonderful week because last year, I think one of the best things about being part of EWC, the competition was amazing, the pitches were amazing, but we really made deep connections. And I'll tell you, this year, I have every hope in the world of making 100 new friends plus because of the ridiculous bar and bonds that were set last year. So one of the, I would have to say, people who literally stole our heart and made us cheer for him from the moment we met him was our guest today. So it was no surprise to anyone when literally every company, all 100, were cheering and celebrating and crying tears of joy when Nerv Technologies won, because Amr and his team, it was really one of those things where his company's awesome. The team is awesome. Business is awesome. But in reality, we just really believed that he and his team were going to execute, and they were honest and ethical. The vision was there. And when you like people, it's really easy to get behind them. So today's guest, as I mentioned, COO and co-founder of Nerv Technologies, Amr Abdelgawad. And I think one of the coolest parts about this story is how truly international his team is, the story of getting to EWC. And I'm really excited to have you actually hear his thoughts on how they rose to winning the whole thing against some freaking amazing competition. So this is really a reunion for Carlos and me. And we're so happy to see your smiling face. We miss you. And we're so happy you're here this week. So where do you want to start? If you can give us a couple minutes of background on kind of how Nerv came to be, and then a few minutes in, we'll show them that winning video and kind of get to talking about your full EWC experience. Cool?
For sure. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Susan and Carlos, for having me here today. It's really nice to see everyone again. It's been what, close to 7, 8 months since we last saw each other. The world has changed since then, and it's been an exciting time for everyone. Challenging and exciting at the same time. We don't really know where things are heading, but hopefully it's for the best for everyone. I hope everyone's been staying safe and doing well as well the last few months. I don't know even know where to start. The road to EWC was exciting for us. It all
Well, start at the very beginning. How did Nerv come to be? What's your
let's do
background?
that.
I mean, we just loved the fact when you think about your background and your co-founder CEO's background and how you guys came to be to build this. I mean, the whole thing is just, I think, very inspirational. So start at the
Sure.
beginning.
Let's do that. So, ironically, my life actually started in Saudi Arabia where the competition was held. That's where I was born and raised. I spent 18 years of my life over there, and then I moved to Canada to study an undergrad in nanotechnology engineering at the University of Waterloo. That's where I met Yusuf, who was also born and raised in Saudi Arabia, but we ended up meeting here in Canada. While I was in third year and he was in fourth year, we came across a problem that we felt was worth solving and a gap in the healthcare system and the way medical practice was being administered that needed to be resolved. And that problem actually stemmed from the pains and worries of his own mother, a surgeon, who was worried about her patients post-operatively, not knowing for sure if they're recovering well or potentially suffering from a complication. And it seemed evident that the way the post-op period is being dealt with is that it's very reactive. We have to wait and see if patients show symptoms or not, if they're recovering well or not. And it became evident to us that we need to be more proactive and save patients' lives that are pretty much lost every year because of a problem that goes undiagnosed or a complication that is sometimes detected at a later stage. So we set foot on the journey back in 2014, and we never looked back ever since. Started working slowly on a solution. We started gaining validation from surgeons, even from a few competitions here and there, and we were sure that we were on to something big. And then, long story short, the team actually grew from just the two of us, myself and Yusuf, today to a strong team of 14 individuals. We had a great journey going through EWC, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit more during the next hour. And yeah, today we're at a stage where we're going through our clinical studies and hopefully in the next couple of years ready to be commercial.
Amazing. So I'd actually love to hear more about kind of the origin story. So totally makes sense where it came from, but you didn't have a background in medicine. What's your actual business background? And he didn't have a background in medicine either. So how do you go from someone's mom who's a medical doctor saying, here's this problem, and you guys not having the background to being able to win one of the biggest international competitions for startups?
Yep, that's a great question. So even though we don't have medical backgrounds, we're engineers, and I think it's an ego thing. When you're an engineer, you just want to solve anything and everything. So when Yusuf was told of the problem, he was like, "I'm an engineer. I have a background in nano engineering. I worked on sensors. I think I might be able to solve this problem." So as you're saying, we have no business background whatsoever. We just started working on a solution, and with some time, we started gaining that business knowledge. We started understanding exactly what it means to not only take a product, but take an entire business to market and to make it successful. We were lucky that we were surrounded by mentors, people with a ton of experience, both in the startup world, in the medical device space, who really understand how to take a product from ideation to commercialization. And if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't have been possible. We learned a lot along the way. We definitely gained a ton of experience that we did not have. And just by putting yourself into the field itself and trying to understand exactly what it means to commercialize a solution and a product and understanding your customer needs, that's how the whole story started coming together. It didn't just become a simple product, it actually became a full-on business that can potentially become a huge company in the medical device space. And that's our vision. That's what we want to do in the future.
So it started with the two of you. And
Yeah.
can you go through kind of, did you fundraise right away? What other members of the team did you want to start with? And I'm asking you these kind of questions because we have a lot of idea stage companies and early stage companies that are looking for co-founders, looking for partners, trying to decide who that first employee, partner, how do you even start prioritizing who joins the team? And you're the COO. So when you think through operationally what you did and what you would have done differently or what you've learned along the way, please divulge.
Yeah, for sure. One of the most important things you can do when you're first starting a business is making sure you have a strong team. That's what can really make or break a startup. You're limited in terms of your resources, and you want to try to make sure you maximize the potential of everyone on the team. So one thing you need to be thinking about is that you can't all be engineers, for example, when you start working on a solution like this. You need to diversify your team in terms of the skill set you have. And that's one thing that we started looking at. We realized early on what gaps we have on the team, and we started looking for the right people to work with. Whether they be co-founders, whether they're early employees, it's all the same. The second thing you want to be looking at is making sure you have a good cultural fit. Because no matter how good of a person you think you are bringing on, if that relationship is toxic, if you guys are not communicating well as a team, it's just going to come crashing down on everyone's heads. So just make sure that you guys have a good fit, both on the skill side as well as a cultural team fit. As for the story of fundraising, it's always a challenge to fundraise for a startup. And what's even more challenging is usually for hardware startups, and it's even the most challenging, in my opinion, when it comes to medical device startups that have a ton of regulations, a long path to market, to be able to convince investors that you're going to make it when you're a bunch of 21, 22-year-old engineering graduates who have no experience in the industry. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort and guts, but in my opinion, we were surrounded by the right ecosystem. And maybe we're lucky to be able to have that ecosystem around us. And one thing you'd always want to try to do is to make sure you put yourself in a position where you're around the right people, people with the right mindset, people who understand what it takes to take an idea to market. So that's what we did early on. We slowly started getting some government grants because we were an R&D deep tech startup that needs a lot of research in the beginning to get its technology up and running. So we ended up going for a bunch of government grants to get us through the early stages. I think we raised somewhat around $1 million to $1.5 million in non-dilutive funding just to kickstart the business. Slowly after we started having an MVP, we started reaching out to early stage investors, some angels, accelerator programs. These were the early funders. And I think it's a typical pathway that any startup takes. You go through accelerators, friends and family, pre-seed round. And now we're at a stage where we're just closing up a seed round. And to be completely honest, thanks to EWC, that really helped move our seed round significantly. We were having a hard time right before the EWC to close the round, and all of a sudden things went 180 degrees in the other direction, and we were able to, as of now, actually commit the entire $2.5 million that we're raising. So in total, we have up to $4 million in funding that we've raised so far since the inception of the company.
That's amazing. So let's talk about building that team though. So it was the two of you.
Yep.
Where do you start deciding who's the third person, who's the fourth person, who's the fifth? And if you could talk a little bit about how you incentivized people. Did you decide early on that you were going to do, equity plus a little salary? How did you make those decisions early on when you were really starting from scratch?
Typically what we've seen around us in terms of startup founders, they're usually anywhere between 3 to 5 founders. It doesn't have any specific number in my opinion. I think it's just more about the drive, the passion, trying to surround yourselves with the right people who can really be strong enough to lead a company. And that's what really mattered to us at the end of the day. We realized as well that we were missing certain skills from the beginning. Even though I have an engineering background, I'm obviously not an expert in everything, and we needed to bring on a strong CTO who really understands different aspects of the device development. So that's when we started looking for another individual to join our founding team as a CTO. And we then started looking into a fourth founder at this point who has the science background and the science experience to understand how really to coordinate the sensors, how they would work medically or from an anatomy perspective from within the body. And that's how we developed this co-founding team. And to be completely frank as well, we actually added a fifth person who was supposed to be part of the co-founding team, but she wasn't strong enough, and we ended up having to let her go, which was one of the more difficult conversations and decisions that you have to take. But you also really need to realize that if you are supposed to have difficult conversations, you should know how to do them, and they will come up a lot if you're working on a startup. And that's how we started building that team together. And eventually we started looking for other early employees to join the company. This is a funny story. We actually put the whole co-founding team together, and we didn't have enough money to be able to pay ourselves salaries. But we made sure that the people who were joining the team really believed in the vision and the mission of the company. And soon enough, we were able to start raising some capital, and we were able to compensate ourselves and the early employees through a combination of shares plus a little bit of salary. And it slowly started growing until we actually hit those numbers that can allow us to live a life without depending on our parents uh, in the first few years. And now we're completely independent, and it's great to feel that way.
So when you look back, what are those early lessons you learned when you were building the team, starting from scratch, even really deciding on what the product would ultimately be? Because one of the challenges a lot of entrepreneurs have is they know the problem they want to solve, but sometimes it's hard to exactly kind of figure out what that MVP is going to look like, what that next version is going to be. And depending on who you're talking to as far as customer validation, you may have this huge spectrum of should it be direct to hospitals or direct to even how you're going to distribute. There's just so many variables. So what did you learn going through that process? Is there anything you look back and said, these were the pivotal things that we did right? Here's what we could have done better?
Yeah, no, that's a big question to unpack, and I'll start with the second part first, especially about the product. We learned the hard way that you need to bring your customer first every single time. No matter how much you think it's a cool idea that you're working on or a sexy product that you might be delivering on, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day if the customer doesn't like it. From your perspective, it could be the best idea in the world, and usually it is because you're the one who's developing it. You think it's the best idea in the world, but as a matter of fact, if you don't speak to enough customers, you're never going to validate and find that product market fit that they always talk about. So we learned the hard way that we need to be speaking to all of our customers and all the different stakeholders within the medical industry. So regulators, hospital directors and administrators, physicians, even nursing staff who are eventually going to be part of the product's workflow. And if you don't speak to all of these people right at once, you're going to start going in a direction where you might head off in a completely different way, and it might actually kill your business altogether. Lucky for us, we weren't going in that direction altogether, but we still made a few mistakes along the way in terms of the product design. When we first started off, we were actually working on a permanent implant that was supposed to stay inside the body essentially forever to monitor patients for the development of these complications. But we were a little bit naive. We thought that this was a sexy idea. But when you think about it from an investor's perspective, if I'm going to wait 10, 15 years for this product to get tested, get approved, regulated, go to market, when am I going to get my ROI? So as much as it was a sexy product, it wasn't a fundable business. And that's when we learned that we need to start pivoting. And at this point, we went back to our customers. We spoke to them a little bit more. We tried to understand how can we improve this product? What existing tools that they have today that we can utilize in order to make our product a little bit better. And that's when we started pivoting into another solution that became more sensible, at least in terms of a go-to-market strategy. Then after doing our animal studies and working closely more with some surgeons, we actually went through a third pivot, which allowed us to take that same sensing technology that was incorporated in a permanent implant to be an external device with less regulatory hurdles, with much faster adoption, without even changing the workflow for physicians, because it's a device that integrates with existing solutions that they have. So that was all part of the learning experience. But I think one thing that we did right is that we never realized that this was it for us. We always believed that there were iterations on the product. Even if the permanent implant was a solution that we think is useful, it's not the final or end goal. It's something that we were working on to begin with in order to validate that this problem exists and that it needs a solution.
And was there any pushback at any point in time from team members, investors? I mean, one of the things that we've seen a lot of is sometimes early investors or board members are looking at what they think the direction should be. And even if you're getting customer validation, sometimes there's questions. Have you had any challenges with that?
Yeah, we were always challenged by our advisors, even though they weren't board members within the company. We always wanted to have advisors who held us accountable, who always reminded us that we need to have that wake up call every 6 months or 3 months to make sure that we're on the right track. And we used to have those people who would challenge us pretty much on the product in terms of its development, on our fundraising strategy, on who our customers should be, who we should be selling to, what our exit strategy looks like. So we were always, I'd say, surrounded by the right people who'd always remind us of these things constantly. And yeah, as I mentioned, we did have a pivot in terms of the product design. We also had a pivot in terms of what our exit strategy might look like, what our go-to-market strategy should look like, what product line we should be developing. So always surround yourselves by these people. Like, these are the ones who are going to help you figure out what your business looks like. But at the end of the day, always remember that you're the ones who are living and breathing this business. As much as you might be getting advice from people who are experienced, these people might not have a vested interest in your company, so they might be giving you advice that they think is sound. But at the end of the day, you're the ones who are seeing the business and seeing the vision. So make sure you take their advice sincerely, but also think about it yourself and see if it makes sense with the direction and the vision of your company.
Well, let's go back a little bit on advisors. So at what point did you start looking for advisors? What was the process you used to decide what the fit would be? Because I assume as you find one person and check that skill set off your list, that then kind of changes the next group of people. So walk us through how you started making that list, how you went through diligencing them, how you incentivize them.
Yeah. So I'd say start finding advisors from day one, even if it's informally, even if they're not going to be involved with your business day in, day out, or getting shares. Just giving people a sense that you're putting yourself in a position where you're surrounded by people who understand what it means to begin a startup, I think gives future investors, future mentors and advisors confidence that you're on the right track. So we did that from the get-go. And as you mentioned, we looked for a diverse set of skills, people with an understanding on the regulatory side, people with an understanding of product development, the medical side as well. We had to develop our own scientific advisory board for people who understand the core problem and who are living this problem day in and day out and can advise us on how to develop a solution for them. They're the end users at the end of the day, they're the customers, and we need to make sure that we're developing a solution that makes sense for them. And then we also started looking for people with experience on the commercialization side. And these are industry experts. Like, these are people who have commercialized medical devices before, whether they've done their own startups or they've been part of bigger organizations where they took a completely new product to market. And in terms of incentivizing them, you obviously might have to give up a little bit of equity in the beginning to make sure that these people are interested enough. And in my opinion, it's great to keep equity within your company. It's great to try to save it up as much as possible. But at the end of the day, if these people don't have a vested interest in your company, why are they going to care as much to be part of your vision, to think with you, to actually take some time and set aside some time to think about how they're going to improve your business? So think about it clearly and actually see who is worthy enough or who deserves to take an equity share in your company and be part of your vision. And don't give it out easily, but at the same time, don't be a little bit cheap or hold it back, because some people actually are worthy and deserving of being a part of your company.
So you have your list. How do you start diligencing them? You're reaching out to them. Are you having meetings? Are you interviewing them? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's a process. We obviously started, first of all, having an informal discussion about what we want to do as a company. We met with them a few times. We wanted to understand exactly what their background was, what their experience was. Once again, if I'm a 21, 22-year-old, I don't really know much about the industry. So I need to get people who are experienced in the space, who understand how to properly have a due diligence process and interview these candidates. Lucky for us, we did have parents who were in the space. Yusuf's father is an exceptional person, in my opinion. I think you remember meeting him at EWC. He works in the space. He works at J&J, and he understands exactly what sort of people we need to have as part of our board, as part of our advisory group. And he helped us go through that process of figuring out who should be advisors on our team. Obviously, along the way, we started gaining some of that experience. That experience became part of our interview and hiring process as well. So it's just not limited to advisors. And if you have someone that you trust, if you know that these people are willing to sit down with you, work with you, they could be parents, they could be older friends, they could be just a part of your network that you've gained along the years. And if they're willing to support you in doing that diligence process, whether it be for advisors or for people that you're planning to bring on as co-founders or early employees, rely on them. At the end of the day, no one's perfect. No one really understands everything in the world, but you just need to be able to have a strong network of people around you to support you with that.
So what does a great COO do?
Everything but the technical work. That's what they call me, and we have this running joke in the company that they need to update my title to CEO, which stands for Chief Email Officer, because that's pretty much what I do for the most part every single day. I'm in charge mainly of the operations, business development, contacts with hospitals and physicians, working out and figuring out what our next steps in terms of our go-to-market strategy should look like, looking into different verticals and other markets that we can potentially tap into the future. And as much as this could be a combination of a CEO's work and a COO's work, Yusuf and I think, are a great team. We're like the Batman and Robin of our company. We always back each other up when it comes to these things, and we work hand in hand to try to focus on these things. But I'm personally just focused entirely on the operations, the finance, the business development, fundraising, and investor communication. And sometimes I chime in when it comes to going into other verticals and markets with Yusuf.
Well, let's walk through that a little bit. You know, when it's 2 people and 3 people, it's pretty easy to subdivide roles. As you start adding on the team, what does that process look like? Because I know how busy you are and you have all these things on your plate. But at some point, as you're realizing your time is more valuable and should be focused on X versus Y, what does that look like for parsing out some of the project pieces, some of the role, and making sure that you can stay as focused as possible?
Yeah. So that answer is a function of a few things, including figuring out what your runway looks like, what your next milestones also should look like, and making sure that you line those all up so that you don't burn out personally, while at the same time not onboarding way too many people that would burn out the entire company. So you need to make sure that you have all of that planned out. And that's part of my role as well. Looking into the next 18 to 24 months, trying to understand what the business needs look like from a product development standpoint and from a business development standpoint. And when we started looking into what the next phase looked like for us, we realized, A, we're missing a bunch of skills on the team that need to be fulfilled in order to be able to grow this company. B, myself and Yusuf were also starting to burn out a little bit in terms of the amount of work that we have on ourselves. There was no way we can focus on core business development work, maintaining the vision for the company, as well as proceeding with fundraising while taking on a load of other work as well. And that's when we needed to trust other people to bring them on to the team to be able to carry this business forward. At the end of the day, we're all part of a ship. And if we don't onboard the right people, we don't onboard more people who are capable of taking on these responsibilities, the entire ship is going to sink. So that was part of the thinking process a little bit in terms of ourselves not burning out and keeping the whole company afloat as well at the same time.
Yeah, those are important things to do. So we have a few questions coming in. So let's start with,
Sure.
What if I'm at ground zero business-wise? I have a business idea that could help my country's education sector. Where do I actually go from idea to reality?
Oh, that's a very long roadmap. And the first thing I think I mentioned early on was making sure you have a good product market fit. Before you do anything, you need to validate that this idea makes sense, that you're trying to target a problem with a solution that actually makes sense. As much as you might be thinking that your solution is the best solution in the world, you're never going to be too sure until you go out, survey people, have focus groups, talk to your end users and customers to make sure that this is the right product that you're working on. Once you have that piece in place, you need to start figuring out what resources you're going to need in order to be able to take this idea, as you said, from ground zero to reality. And these resources, whether it be human resources, intellectual resources, or even monetary resources, you need to be able to map all of this out. And as a company founder, potentially the CEO of your company, this is your role and responsibility. From there, you start looking for the right partners, the right people to work with. You're never going to be able to do it all on your own. So you need to make sure you have the right team to be able to deliver on this. That's the next step. And from there, you develop an MVP. You go back again to the market. You try to validate that this MVP makes sense. At this point, you start getting more validation. From there, you gain, if you need to raise money to be able to get this moving forward, you go out and take all of that feedback, present it to investors, present your business case, try to raise some money, go to market right away if you can. Even the best form of raising money is getting revenue from your customers. So if you can do that, that's even great. And if you can try to maintain that within your company, good for you. But these are usually the first steps that I would recommend taking to take that idea from ground zero.
So we have a couple of questions about what goes in a good pitch deck. So Carlos, can we pull up Amir's pitch? And you guys are going to have the treat of seeing the winning pitch from EWC last year. And while we're watching that, I really want you to think through how your pitch evolved and the challenge of having a kind of early stage company at a time when some of these companies pitching last year, guys, holy smokes. I mean, one of the companies had already raised $120 million. A couple of the other companies had 4 to 8 million month-over-month recurring revenue. And that really speaks to how much the judges saw in Nerv as an opportunity, as a solid business, and the leadership there. So I really want you to have this in your heads as we watch this video. When you think through who wins competitions and who gets funded, it's not always the people who seem to be furthest along. It's who you believe is going to kick ass. And we all know, I mean, you hear him talking. It's impossible not to know how much butt he's going to kick. And apologies for my French. So, Carlos, can we pull that up, man? Carlos?
Sorry about that. The computer froze.
Okay, I know you're always muted. Okay, so can you pull up the video?
Yep. Okay,
and I'm going straight to you with questions afterward, Amr, so get ready. Think about that development, right? Are you sharing screen, Carlos?
About to right now. So it's going to start a couple seconds early.
Okay.
Let me know when you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, great. Volume's up. Full screen.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm pretty sure some of you in this room have been in this position before. You're sitting next to a loved one after a surgery, concerned about their recovery, not sure if they're doing okay, or if they're suffering from a complication that we're all completely blind to. After a surgery, if a complication happens, there are 2 to 3 days before treatment can begin. This window can mean the difference between life and death for some patients. And for those that end up surviving the complication, their quality of life goes down and costs increase significantly. In short, it's a very delayed and reactive way to handling post-operative care. Initially, we're targeting a complication known as anastomotic leaks that can happen after abdominal surgeries, where typically they would remove parts of the GI tract in order to remove a tumor and then reconnect it again with staples. Unfortunately, that staple line can get cut open and content from inside of your GI tract would leak into your abdominal cavity. At Nerv, we've developed sensors that augment existing wound drains that are being used today in order to identify the presence of those leaks as soon as they happen. And to better understand how this works, the drain gets placed near the surgical site, and by simply squeezing the bulb, you can extract fluid which goes across our sensors for analysis, gets uploaded to the cloud, and then presented in real time in front of a physician. Other companies have been looking at this problem from a preventative perspective by trying to improve staplers to prevent misfiring, or using imaging techniques during surgery in order to identify the risks of a leak. But because of clinical factors, leaks will still occur, and we've positioned ourselves to be the only post-operative company that is capable of continuously monitoring patients. There are north of 70 million general surgeries performed annually around the world, and we're targeting 1.7 million in the United States initially, where we can have the most impact. So far, we've developed our sensing technology where we were able to detect leaks in under 3 minutes. Moving forward, we are beginning our regulatory approval process and our clinical studies in order to have our first paid pilot a year from today, and scaling this technology in the United States 2 years from now. We've raised under $2 million, and we're currently raising $2.5 million in order to get to market. The device would be sold for $600 a unit to hospitals, allowing us to generate, on average, under $1 million per hospital per year. Our team has product and business development experience as well as regulatory experience in order to take this idea to market. And I'm proud to say that we've received letters of intent from hospitals, which will be a part of a growing number of pilot sites to allow us to generate north of $2 million by 2021. And we've got partners such as Johnson & Johnson on this ride with us. I'm Abdelgawad, we are Nerv, and we are here to create post-operative complications as a problem and make it a period of the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm sure it's surreal even watching that video. That whole day was like a dream. Can you go back and share with us how your pitch deck and how your pitch evolved from the first time you pitched probably for a grant or even one of your advisors to getting it to a place where you win EWC?
Yeah, that was a roller coaster of emotions that day. It brought back a lot of memories. It evolved a lot. Funny enough, Yusuf and I were actually watching our first ever pitch from 2015, if I'm not mistaken, just a couple of months ago. And we were looking at it and we were like, oh my, we were idiots when we were working on Nerv back then. Things have changed significantly ever since. And I think there are a few pointers along the way that we were told by mentors, by people who always used to give us feedback on our pitches, that helped get it to a point, in my opinion, that's in even better shape than the pitch that you just saw right now. First of all, you need to understand who your audience is. And you need to understand what sort of timeline you have. We had 3 minutes to deliver this pitch. And in 3 minutes, it's probably not enough time to start even talking about your business. All of us can start ranting for like hours and hours about what we're working on, and being able to condense it all into 3 minutes is definitely a challenge. So you need to be able to focus on highlights of what your problem is and what your company is all about. And there are a few areas that you need to focus on. For example, you need to start off in a way that captivates and captures everyone's interest. They always say the first 10 seconds are what can make or break a pitch. If you don't catch people's attention within the first 10 seconds, you've lost them. And you're essentially speaking for 3, 5, 10 minutes, whatever that time frame is. And it's pretty much all going over their heads. So within the first 10 seconds, make sure you capture their interests. Know who your audience is. Present the problem in simple terms right away. Don't go talking about how complicated the problem is. Simplify it as if you're speaking to your grandma. You need, as they always say as well, you need to be able to present this as if you're speaking to a 7-year-old or if you're speaking to a 75-year-old and everyone in between. So if you can't simplify this enough to someone who doesn't understand the core technicalities behind this, then you're already failing. When it comes to your solution as well, as much as you might be really excited to talk about it, don't spend a long time trying to explain to people what you're working on. Make it a very simple, seamless solution and explain it in a way, once again, where anyone can understand it. And then the most important piece at this point, I think, is trying to tie these two together, how your solution fits this problem. And if you can present it in a way where you can show that these two fit like a puzzle piece, then at this point you're delivering on your pitch in an even better format. And that's something that we learned along the way as well. And then you need to be speaking about your market. You need to be speaking about your competition. If you go out and say we're the only ones trying to solve this, no one's going to believe you, because there has to be someone else who has thought about this before. And if there's no one thinking about this before, then it's probably because it's a bad market to be in the first place. So you need to make sure you highlight that part well enough and show how you stand out. Then you need to talk about your go-to-market strategy. How are you going to make this happen? Cover aspects related to your team and why your team is the right team to be able to deliver on this. And I think even since then, we've actually been able to grow our team significantly. We realized back then in the competition that we still had gaps on the team that we needed to fill. And we were able to bring that team from 9 individuals, I believe it was back then, to 14 right now. So trying to also present the fact that you know what you know and you know what you don't know is an important piece of your pitch. And if you can cover it during that time, that would be fantastic. And then end with a bang. Just like you can start your pitch with the first 10 seconds being really strong, make sure you end it really well so that you remain as part of people's minds.
I remember sitting in the audience that day, and we were very lucky despite having amazing people everywhere in that audience. We had great seats so we could smile at you. And I'll never forget watching you pitch. And when you talked about the competition, it's the biggest brands in healthcare. And it's so fascinating that you were able to find that balance of confidence and humility so that the judges knew you were going to be coachable, great to work with, you guys were going to execute, but you knew what you were doing to be able to go against the giants. Can you talk about finding that balance? Because sometimes we watch pitches and the speaker is just so unlikable because they're, I don't want to say overly confident, but there's almost a condescension. And you've always been one who can just get people cheering for you because of that humility, but confidence in your team and the company. How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, so there are a few things here, and I was actually talking to someone yesterday about our pitches at EWC. And speaking of that smile, I always remember when you were in the first row in the first round of pitches, and then even in the last one in the finals, how you were standing there. And when I looked at you, you did this, and you reminded me to smile. So being likable is obviously a big piece. Whether it be judges or investors or partners or coworkers, you need to make sure you're building this strong dynamic and showing people that A, you're coachable, B, you actually understand what you're doing, and you are a likable person. At the end of the day, this is a relationship business. You're working with people the whole time. If they don't like you, they're not going to continue working with you. It's as simple as that. But also understanding where your position is, no matter how good you think you are, is really important. You need to be grounded. And I remember one thing that a friend of mine told me is like, after we won this competition, he's like, you guys are taking off, like things are going really well for you. You just won a Johnson & Johnson award. You just won the Entrepreneurship World Cup. And he was like, remember, despite all of that, you need to be grounded. It can all go away in a matter of seconds. And you didn't make it yet, even though it seems like you're going somewhere. You still didn't make it, and you have a long way to go. So always remember to be humble, always remember to be grounded, and know where you stand. So being coachable, being likable, as you said, are important factors. Knowing where your position is are all important factors to be able to demonstrate to people that you might be a successful business, you have the right leadership, but at the same time, you're a great person, you have the great team to be working with. So these are all pieces that you need to demonstrate.
What are mistakes you saw other teams make? I mean, you've seen tons of pitches, not just at EWC, but what are common mistakes you see in other pitches that are totally avoidable? I mean, you went through a great kind of overview of what makes a good pitch. What are the common mistakes you're seeing that are often challenges?
I don't think I'm in a position to say that these are mistakes, and I'd like not to get into that, but I'll definitely say a few things that some people make along the way in terms of let's call them mistakes for now, that sometimes end up causing them to lose a competition or lose someone's interest. So first of all, as I said, not getting people's attention within the first 10-15 seconds can kill your pitch all the way. So make sure you're focused from the beginning on trying to capture and captivate people's interest. The second piece is, if you don't know an answer to a question, or if you don't know a piece that is related to your company or your vision, say it clearly. Say that you're still having that gap, you don't know the answer to that question, but you're working on solving it. Obviously, everyone understands that there are things that you still might not be able to know or understand about your business, but they need to have the confidence that you have the right team in place to be able to answer these questions in the future. No one likes a know-it-all, as they say. And being humble and having the humility to demonstrate that, yes, there are gaps in your business, there are gaps maybe in you or in your team. All of these speak a lot to how you believe in yourself and believe in your vision. Competition has been a common problem that a lot of companies sometimes have a hard time presenting and even talking about, because they're afraid of showing themselves as weaker than other companies out there, or that there are others who might be able to beat them, like the Medtronics or the Johnson and Johnsons that are out there. These are giants. They can come take us and wipe us out any second. But that's not how they operate. That's not how they think. For them, it's a huge entity, and to be able to divert a core part of their team to focus on a particular product is something that will take them time and a lot of money. So the way some of these businesses operate is that they look at smaller companies that are nimble, that can move fast enough, have the right R&D capacity to be able to eventually partner with those people and then maybe even acquire them in the future. So yes, they're competition, but at the same time, they're potential partners and strategic partners for us in the future. So be able to understand the difference between those two and to present yourself in a position where you understand the market dynamics, so that eventually you don't get taken over or show yourself as weaker or even stronger as what you're supposed to be demonstrating yourself as. These are important factors that I feel some companies sometimes miss out on.
So, how did you actually go about finding the teammates? How did you meet your co-founder, and then your next few teammates? Did you already know them? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Yusuf and I, when we first started off, like we were friends from the beginning. I met him in my first year. He was actually my mentor and my teaching assistant at some point. We have some jokes about that every now and then. But beyond the two of us, we started looking within our network here in Waterloo. Um, Once again, I think we're extremely lucky to be in an ecosystem that is releasing a lot of high caliber graduates. People that come out of Waterloo are probably some of the top students that you'd ever meet in your life. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a graduate of Waterloo. It speaks volumes. I think the university is well known as well around the world. So we were lucky to be surrounded by some of those people, and it was easy for us to look within our own ecosystem to try to find the right people to work with. One thing that we did right, and I'd never realized that we were doing it the right way from the beginning, except now, is that we hired interns during our first couple of years working out of the company. And these interns actually came back again and became full-time employees with us and part of our team. And we established that relationship with them, and we were able to know what their capabilities are, how they can fit within the team. And eventually these people came back and became early employees in the company. And sometimes it's a good idea to maybe test out a relationship through an internship. If you feel like you have a sense of what this person can bring to the team, but you're not quite sure you want to take the leap or the step to bringing them on full time, go through a small contract, go through a short-term internship. And then once things settle down and you feel like this person is the right person to bring on the team, onboard them.
So we have a question from Daniela. In carrying out your product survey, oh, another chat thing just came in. Okay, here we go. In carrying out how do you carry out your product survey? Do you have to work in the industry to have the right skill set to start up a business? Can you kind of talk about what does that building out that product survey look like, so you can get the information you need when you start talking to customers?
It's probably a little bit of a trial error and error process. So when you first start talking to potential customers and end users, you gauge and start to get a sense of what sort of questions they're going to be asking. So you don't have to have the perfect survey from day one. By just going out and talking to some of these people, you're going to start to understand the way they think and what sort of questions they're trying to ask. And from there, you start building that survey. No, we didn't have any industry experience. As I said, I was in third and my co-founder was in his fourth year of undergrad when we started working on this. So we had zero experience. But one thing we did right was that we partnered up with the person who told us about this problem, which is Yusuf's mother. And we understood from her exactly what pain points she was suffering from and where exactly we needed to try to target in terms of a solution to be able to meet the requirements that these end users are looking for. That's how we started building that survey. We're still actually iterating on our product. So we still go back to the same people that we spoke to. We always ask them, what if we change this? Would this make it better? We didn't reach a design freeze yet. And this is what allows us to iterate a little bit on the product. And we rely on these people constantly. So it's not a one-time thing. It's a continuous process.
So how do you find great mentors? When a lot of entrepreneurs are starting out, everybody thinks they need the mentors, but there are very specific mentors you need for different points in time. And so I would love to get your take on how you decide what kind of mentor you need. How do you find that person? How do you make sure it's a fit? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think we touched on this a little bit early on, but I'm happy to elaborate a little bit more. So your business doesn't just consist of one part. There's different aspects related to your business. So there's the fundraising part, for example. There's the product development piece. There's the business development piece and understanding how to take this product to market. For example, in the medical space, there's the regulatory piece. And obviously, you're not going to be an expert in all of these fields. You might not even be an expert in any of these fields when you begin with. You just might have a vision and a goal in your mind and you want to achieve it. So when you start working, it's either you're going to find the right co-founders who have experience in the space, or if you can't find the co-founders, you can start by working with these people as mentors and advisors, and eventually these people can come and join your team as co-founders. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure you go through a specific vetted process to bring the right people to join your team. As I mentioned early on, when we started doing this process, we had a lot of informal meetings. We sat down with people who have experience in different fields. We actually went on LinkedIn. We stalked some people. We saw who the right people are that we would like to work with based on other people's comments on working with them previously or their experiences with them. These are all things that give you a sense whether this is the right person that you want to be working with or not. We reached out to them, had a few meetings. Once we felt like they were interested in the team, in us, not necessarily because of any financial gain that they might get out of this business, that's when we realized that these are the right people that we want to continue working with. So it's a continuous process. As I mentioned, mentors and advisors can come in all shapes, ways, and forms, and their involvement in your business can differ. Bringing them on board when you feel like they're the right people and actually compensating them the right way will make them feel appreciated as well. So you have to think about this in a way where you don't want to sort of scare anyone off or turn anyone off and let them not work with you because you're not compensating them in the right way. So that's another piece that you need to be thinking about continuously. And then there's a whole conversation about how much equity you need to be giving out and all of that, but maybe we can have that for a later conversation.
So you've done several rounds now, and what have you learned as you've gone through these different rounds about valuation best practices, understanding the fit between not just looking for an investor, but diligencing them to make sure they're a fit? Can you kind of talk about what you've learned through your different rounds?
It gets harder and harder. Some people think it gets easier, but at least so far from our experience, it gets more and more challenging. But so far, we've been able to take it on, which is good. But speaking about valuation, I think that's a conversation that always comes up, and it's a conversation that investors hate having and founders hate having. But I think one way to be able to reach a middle ground is to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Think about what the investor is putting as well at stake when they invest in your company. And if it's a VC, for example, they have responsibilities towards their limited partners that they need to deliver on. So if you start asking for a ridiculous valuation, they're going to tell you, okay, like there's no way we're going to work with you from the beginning. It just doesn't make sense. You have to be able to always put yourself in the other person's shoe and have numbers that back you up. Don't just go out and say, I'm asking for a ridiculous valuation and expect it to work. It doesn't work that way. At the same time, when you look for investors, don't just look for people who are going to put in money in your company just so that it's extra fuel in the tank to keep you going. Look for the right investors beyond the capital that they bring to the table. These people can have a strong network, and I always say your network is your strongest asset. If you have the right people that you're working with, whether it be from the capital side, from the relationship and network side, you're going to start having a complete perspective on the market. You're going to have a better understanding of the market, and you're going to potentially unlock future customers as well. So make sure when you're looking for an investor to always find the right person who has the potential to take you over that finish line, not just with their money, but also with the experience and the networks that they have.
So you've talked a little bit about how you've accessed the ecosystem and really made it work for you. If people are starting from scratch, where do they start being able to be part of an ecosystem? What suggestions do you have to make the most of what may be around them and really an active ecosystem, but they may just not be part of it yet?
Yeah, and I think that's actually probably one of the best places to start, is to throw yourself into the right ecosystem. When I look back, and I don't want to make it sound as if I have a ton of experience, but when I compare myself or ourselves today as entrepreneurs with entrepreneurs 15, 20 years ago, we are so lucky with the kind of support that we have today, whether it be through incubators, through accelerators, through competitions. That global ecosystem that we have in place today did not exist 15, 20 years ago. And we are lucky to be able to be part of such a group. I probably would have never met Susan and Carlos and the rest of the Gen team if it wasn't for that competition. And the people that we met at EWC actually became investors in our current seed round. And if we're not throwing ourselves into these right ecosystems, in the right environment, surrounding ourselves with the right people, you're never going to be able to grow. So my suggestion is to start either at a good accelerator or an incubator that you feel is matching or is a good fit for your business in terms of the direction that you're heading, has the right mentors, has the right advisors for your stage of the company. Not every accelerator as well is going to be a good fit. Some accelerators actually accept companies that are far more ahead than an idea stage. So look for ones that have mentors and advisors that are willing to invest time, energy, and resources into your business at the stage that you're in today.
So this is very specific to the examples you've been giving. How do you leverage the research institutions? How do you find that grant funding for R&D type products? Because I'm sure there are a lot of different places, including the government, that you look to. What does that process look like?
I'm pretty sure it's different for different countries, but from at least Canada's perspective, there are a few or specific grant and funding institutions that are really well known, at least when it comes to the R&D side, that you would start looking into. And it's not like I knew them all from day one. It took a ton of research as well, being part of different accelerator and incubator newsletters. They would always update us on what grant and funding opportunities are out there. And you start building that Rolodeck of funding opportunities that you can potentially tap into. And that's how we started building our own non-dilutive fundraising strategy, as we like to call it, because that on its own can be a fundraising strategy. And you'd be surprised how much funding you can unlock from non-dilutive sources and from grants. And that can propel your business forward, at least for the first few years, if you're unable to raise outside capital. Sometimes it's not easy to begin with to raise outside capital, especially if you're a deep tech business. It can take a few years to be able to do that. So I'm not going to be able to speak on behalf of what other countries have, but at least for Canada, I've put together a list of non-dilutive funding resources. And if anyone's interested, or if they think that they might be able to benefit from them, feel free to put us in touch, Susan, if you can. Happy to share that with them. And regardless, even if it's not the non-dilutive funding sources, I'm happy to share any other thoughts and advice that I might be able to help out with.
What was your branding strategy, and how did you communicate your company's values through marketing, external PR, etc.?
Yeah, not gonna lie, I don't think we put enough effort into that at the very early stages, and we're probably still slacking on that and not doing a really good job, because I think the one way we always like to present ourselves is that no life should be lost because of a problem that goes undetected. And once we start putting that message across, to investors, to potential customers, to even people that we just speak to about our business, they tell us, you have such a great vision and such a great mission. Why are you not talking about that enough? And at the end of the day, we are a medical device company. We are in the healthcare business, and our main goal is to always save lives. And I think we need to be putting more effort into that. So I can't really speak much to saying that we've built a really strong brand around us, but that's what we're trying to build, and that's what we're working on. For the longest time, we were working on developing a product, and I think that's the piece that made us busy for the most part for the first few years. But as we start shifting to being commercial, I think that's an area that we need to really focus on. Don't get me wrong, I don't think we did it the right way, and we definitely need to improve. I think it's part of your business to be able to build a strong brand from the beginning. So do that from the beginning if you can. Focus on it if you can. Don't just focus on one piece, which is the product, for example, if that's what you're developing. Focus on all aspects of your business from the get-go.
And what have you done to help yourself become the kind of person that can be the COO of a company that has this much potential impact, this much opportunity, this many investors and people trusting and believing that you're going to move forward? How do you continue to keep developing yourself, to keep leading?
Learn from your mistakes. That's the first thing that I'll probably say. And oh boy, we've done a ton of those along the way. But I always look back, and I think one thing we do right at Nerv is that every 3 months, we actually hit the pause button and we look back and see what the previous 3 months looked like. And we always look back and see if we've been delivering on every single milestone and objective that we said we'd deliver on. And if we don't, we try to understand why that happened and try to take active steps towards improving that. So we're not just developing a company, we're also developing ourselves along the way, because we hold each other accountable at this point. And there's always things that you can continuously improve on, whether it be a better understanding of the market, a better understanding of your competitors. What can you do in terms of building this company in the future? What other verticals you can try to get into? There's always more that you can do. I heard this saying before by one of my mentors, and he essentially said, if there's a day you're working on your startup and you don't have work, then you're not building a startup and you're doing something wrong. So you should always be busy, whether you're busy trying to think of the future or thinking of even the past and trying to learn from those mistakes so that you can enable the future to be better.
Can you give us an example? Because I love the fact that your team and you are always so clear and honest. Can you give us an example of a mistake that was made and what you learned and how you change that process in the future? Something really concrete.
Yeah, I'll probably go back to the same points that I mentioned early on, which is us developing a product that we thought was super sexy. And we actually, I think, won an award that said something along the lines of sexy product or something like that because of how good of a product it was, but not necessarily part of a fundable business. And don't get me wrong, I think it's something that we might be able to deliver on in the future, but just not today with the resources that we have. And that's one thing that we actually learned the hard way, which is not speaking to enough customers and not speaking to all of the stakeholders from the beginning. We focused all of our efforts and time to try to speak to surgeons who are, yes, the end users, but they're not the only decision makers when it comes to the medical device industry. It's a space there where there are so many stakeholders, so many people who make decisions. They start thinking about it from a financial perspective, from a patient safety perspective. So we always used to take a step back and stop and see where and who we can talk to make sure that we're delivering on something that makes sense for everyone. So eventually that's what realized the product that we have today. And that's what actually led us to go through 3 different pivots in terms of a product. And to get to a product that I believe, in my opinion, makes a whole lot of sense to everyone that we speak to. Whenever we pitch this to someone today, and it would be the same person that we pitched to 3-4 years ago, they'd be like, okay, now your business makes sense. Before it didn't make sense to us. And we learned that the hard way. And I don't think there's any problem in that, as long as you actually realize where that mistake is and you try to improve and deliver on it.
But how do you find the balance between analysis paralysis and getting too much in? I mean, I know you have to go speak to customers over and over and over again, but when do you stop? And it's not an issue of stopping. When do you know, okay, we can make a decision now because we have enough data?
So it's all part of the process of being lean and being able to move fast. So you start developing small iterations and you develop an MVP, and your MVP is going to change every, I don't know, maybe a few months. So you go back again to your customers until you feel that there is no more pushback. There's no more resistance to what you're trying to develop. Part of it is going to be because you've actually reached to a point where you might have developed something right. And at the same time, from their perspective as well, they're not finding anything wrong in what you're trying to deliver on, and they're starting to see the value and they're starting to see the whole picture. So be nimble, move fast, take the feedback that you get slightly with a grain of salt. Sometimes it's too critical that it might prevent you from moving fast enough or delivering on something that will and should eventually be the right product. So always take it in, soak all the feedback that you get from your customers, but make sure you only take the pieces that are relevant, that make sense to what you're trying to deliver on. So don't burn yourself out, don't burn your business in the process trying to deliver on something that might take ages and years to develop. Make sure you're nimble and you're moving fast enough.
But that goes back to, when you take the guidance with a grain of salt, sometimes those people are just not your customer, right?
Yeah. And you might be talking to the wrong crew altogether. You might not be talking to the right people. And at this point, you're pivoting not in terms of your product, but you might be pivoting in terms of who your customers are, or who your end users are. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, being a CEO is so hard, guys. You have to have like a little bit of a sadomasochistic situation going on to want to be an entrepreneur in the first place, to have that opportunity cost of every other thing you could be doing. But at the end of the day, those of us with the disease, it's like there are no other options. So how do you stay motivated and focused? I mean, the two of you, Amir, could do anything in the world. You guys are just like amazing. And I know that the world is your oyster. How do you stay focused and motivated for each other, for your team, and just especially with the horizon we're talking about?
Yeah. Two things here that I always talk about when it comes to this point. One is passion. If you're not passionate about what you do, the first obstacle and hurdle you hit is going to potentially break you down. So if you're not passionate about what you're working on, first of all, it's going to show to people that you're talking to. So you need to be able to demonstrate that passion so that people start believing in you as well, and being able to deliver on what you're working on. And the second piece has to go back to team. I kid you not, I had moments even a few days ago where I was feeling so down, so low. And if it wasn't for my co-founders, I probably wouldn't be as optimistic and cheerful as you see me right now. So being able to support yourself with the right team from a skill set perspective, but also from a dynamic where you guys understand each other, you're capable of working together, and you're uplifting each other the whole time. These are all pieces that keep you motivated, keep pushing you forward. When I'm down, let's say, for example, Yusuf is actually the one who picks me up. The other way around with Abdallah, our CTO, it can be the same situation. And that's when we start pulling in and we uplift each other to keep this company moving forward. As you said, it's not just us founders right now. We're a much bigger team right now, a much bigger family. And that's how it honestly feels within this company. They make fun of me when I always say in my pitches that this is my second family when I present the team. And they're like, you always say that. And I tell them it's because I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe that I have a family within this company. And that's how we keep pushing each other forward.
And last question. You have a virtual team running now. How have you been able to stay? What are the best practices you guys have used to be able to keep moving things forward and fundraise successfully through such a challenging time?
Oh, it was a struggle. It definitely took a lot of work. It took a lot of effort, especially that we're such a cross-functional team. We have people dealing with hardware, firmware, software, and we talk to each other a lot, and we need to have these small discussions the whole time. We did go virtual for approximately 2.5 months, and we started realizing that things were not moving fast enough. Partly because of just everything that's going on around us, but at the same time because we found that we're involved in way too many meetings as one person from this team needs to be in the meeting, and then they need to join another meeting from another team. So we realized we were talking a lot but not executing. And I think that's when we hit the stop button and we started realizing that we need to make a change in the way we're running the business. So we started moving a little bit back into the office in a way that we can try to maintain this team and maintain the company while maintaining everyone's safety, and keeping everyone moving forward. Sometimes you have to figure out what works best for you. My advice for you might not work for your company. It all depends on your situation. But just make sure you're doing everything that is right for your company while maintaining everyone's happiness and safety. Morale is very important. We realized at some point that people's productivities were dipping, mainly because of lack of interaction with other people. Even though we were seeing each other the whole time on Zoom or video chat, it wasn't the same as seeing other people and being able to go out and talk to them in person. So for us, we realized we had to move back into the office, but just do it in a safe manner, and not everyone has to be in the office at the same time. We created shifts, we changed our schedules. We sometimes had to work different and weird hours, but we made it work. So maybe I won't have a ton of advice on that part, but just do what works for you. That's the advice that I'm gonna give.
Well, you need to send our love to Yusuf and to his dad, who was just such a highlight for us. And you know we're here for you. So anytime you need to pick me up, you WhatsApp me, man. We got you.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Lovely
Susan.
to see you. And we could not be more proud. And honestly, when we started last year with EWC, in fact, when Carlos and I started designing what we wanted EWC to be, my biggest concern was that some jerk who had this awesome, crazy big company was going to be the face of this competition. And I could not have, and you know, I was not part of the judging because I'm too close to all the entrepreneurs. Carlos and I become like brothers and sisters with the finalists. And when the dream come true, where you have two Saudi who, and your family's in Egypt, who went to Canada. I mean, it could not have just been a better storyline of authenticity, amazing business, big long term, and really all about solving a customer need with such genuinely lovely people. So our heart goes out to you. We are here for you, and we cannot thank you enough for your humility and just always telling with such candor your experiences and your learning. And we'll have you back again in the next couple of months when we start getting into the smaller groupings, just so you can just share what's been happening since you close your money. Yay! Congratulations. Love to all. Congratulations again. And guys, check your schedules. We have another session coming up next Tuesday. And in the meantime, you have some deliverables to do, so get on it. Good luck. Let us know if you need anything else. Stay safe. Bye, guys. Be good. Go kick butt.
Thank you.